people don't care about your ideas. People care only about what is it for me. And you should always ask this question.
Welcome to another episode of From Startup to Wunderbrand with Nicholas Kuhne. So those of you who are regulars to this podcast will know that I love talking to people who have written books. And what better way to get background information or some tricks and tips than from the people who actually help people publish their own books. So we've got Ben Cena, who's the co-founder behind High Value Author, where he transforms ambitious professionals into best-selling authors. With a knack for turning complex ideas into compelling narratives, Ben and his team handle every aspect of the book publishing process, allowing his clients to focus on what they do best, sharing their expertise, and building their legacy. So with an introduction like that, welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Nicholas. And it's a very correct introduction.
So let's just go into it. Book writing seems like a bit of an anachronism. I mean, who reads books nowadays anyway? Why did a young guy like you get involved in book publishing?
Well, I got involved in the self-publishing in the first place. Back in 2018, at the end of 2018, it was December, when a colleague of mine actually introduced me to publishing, self-publishing. And I was working in a gym at the time in Lithuania. And he said, well, there is this new developing thing, which is called self-publishing, that you don't have to go through a publisher, the old industry, which has been there forever. And there is a new way, specifically with Amazon, that anybody can publish a book. So we started doing that, mostly building different books, right? Publishing different books. We sold that business a couple years in. And at that point, I noticed that these tools can be very valuable for people who have expertise, right? And why wouldn't they use such tools? Why would they think it's such a complicated thing? Well, it's not easy, but if you know what you're doing, it's not that difficult either. So that's probably why. And the frustration, listen, Nicholas, so the frustration that so many authors see a few success stories and they don't know how to use it. They don't know how to use their expertise, how to put that into a book, and the perception changes. Well, I don't like to be boring, but actually a book makes you look smarter, especially if you wrote it. And it's a big deal. Maybe it's not a big deal for those who wrote it and never had success with it. So they try to downplay that game, but it's actually a big deal, specifically if you are an expert in a specific field. And I think most of us have specific expertise. And if you want to share that, part of your legacy, part of your business, part of your personal brand that you want to build, a great marketing tool, if you know how to use it right.
So I've heard from a couple of authors that the process of writing a book was quite inspiring for them as well. It made them really structure their thinking more. It made them take their expertise and really structure it in a way that makes sense, not just to them, but to a larger audience as well. So part of the process of writing a book is actually a lot of enjoyment and self-discovery as well.
Absolutely. I think what I learned working with many authors is that probably you have to learn to enjoy the process. Otherwise, it's a long process for most people. It takes months to write a book. And most people have lives at the same time. And people tend to procrastinate because for almost nobody, writing a book is an urgent thing. Right? Nobody takes it seriously. I mean, and many people I talk to, especially who attempted it, right? They usually come back to that years later. And, because we don't have a clear vision, clear outcome that you want to achieve with a book, they tend to prolong that process. Now, if you have the structure, if you know what the plan is, of course, then you can enjoy it because you know what to expect. So I think that's where the enjoyment comes in. And of course, the results once it's out there, right? So you don't have to have this just the enjoyment of running through the process, but also the results, because that's why you do it in the first place. So it's not fake.
Yeah. Writing a book is one thing, Ben, but similar to some folks who've been onto the podcast, they come onto the podcast as a guest because they want to promote a book or they want to promote their business. And the episode comes out on my channel and that's it. They don't share it, they don't promote it, they don't do anything with it. And then they don't get any views. And they wonder, oh, Nicholas was a terrible guest, nobody watched my episode. I suppose the same thing is similar in the self-publishing space. They can't rely on, once the book's out, they've actually got to do some hard work. Otherwise, it's just going to sit on the shelf or sit on an Amazon data server somewhere gathering dust. How do you take somebody from having written the book and take them through the process of promoting themselves and the book?
Well, so everything starts in the very beginning, and people get too caught up in the writing process. Oh, I'm eager to start writing this, put my ideas down. Let's be honest here. People don't care about your ideas. People care only about what is it for me. And you should always ask this question. If you want to write a book, it's different, depending on your goals. If you're writing a book for yourself or your family, that's one thing. Maybe your aunt is going to buy it, right? For 10 copies, you're going to have a crazy experience. But if you're serious about it and you have a specific outcome in mind, you want to reach X amount of people, you want to sell X amount of copies, you have to know beforehand what the audience expects. What is their level of awareness in terms of what you want to share? Will they understand it? What's the message? What's the title, the cover? Title and cover is a combination that's most important. So once you get to a publishing stage at the very end, and you are ready to roll, and you want to start marketing, you have to know that somebody will care about it. Just running ads in itself doesn't work. You have to do the previous work. So for most people, writing a book title takes 2 seconds. Yeah, that's 3 words, right? But actually, if you understand the importance of it, and that if people don't go through a title, people don't go through the cover, they will never get to your amazing content. So nobody cares, right? So put in the work in the very beginning and have a successful strategy that's proven at the very end once it's live. Then you can have the successful combination. Everything starts even before you write a single word, even the outline of the book.
I suppose books gave us the origins of the original search engine optimization as well, because you need to have your title and a little bit of metadata underneath, just explaining it a little bit more. And then on the inside of the back cover, etc., a little summary, who is the writer, etc. It's pretty much like a landing page. So again, if you don't sell people on the cover and those first couple of words, your book's not going to do terribly well. So we spoke about the marketing side a little bit, but I want to go into what value, other than having your children say, oh, Dad, I've got a book you wrote. Wow, that's so amazing. What other marketing advantages are there of having a book? Because to my understanding, even if you get into the bestseller list on an Amazon category, you're not necessarily making millions of dollars like J.K. Rowling.
Absolutely. No, I don't want to don't downplay the legacy piece, because that's extremely important. I always try to remind people, especially when they're writing it and then creating this message, that of course the outcome and how many people you reach is extremely important in a short term or in a medium term. Legacy piece is also very important, because for me personally, I would want my grandchildren to read it, to understand what I stood for, what I stand for. For me, that's beyond money. But now, speaking, of course, of the marketing play, the bestseller, I can give you an example. A person that now we are working with, he is in education space, and he sells high-ticket services, $5,000-$10,000 range approximately. And he wrote this book as a legacy piece, but at the same time, a natural bridge between this and the next step, which is the implementation. How you want to make your business grow, right? And I'll not go into the specific details about what the business is about, but the point is that the money is usually not in how many copies you're gonna sell, but the money is usually in how you use that book as leverage. So those people who do buy, there is a percentage of those people that can naturally and predictively, that's the key, predictively go to the next step. Maybe that's a conversation. Maybe this is a podcast like what we are doing here. Maybe it's a partnership. Maybe it is clients. Maybe it's sales call, right? Whatever you are doing, we are all in business, right? Everybody wants to take their life, their professionalism, their business to the next level, or whatever it is. Maybe relationships, maybe health. Now, why wouldn't you create that bridge? Because every person who is reading it is always asking, what do I do about it? And there's a hint there. Most people almost never look at a book as an implementation product. Reading in itself is implementation in their heads. So in order for them to implement and say, well, I actually want to lose weight, I actually want to take my business to the next level, I want to become a great leader, whatever the case for a book might be, you have to change the environment. You have to go from a book to somewhere else. And that's where you make the money. And of course, the leverage of bestseller status, that helps, right? You're not going to make millions there just from the bestseller status, but you're going to sell 300, 600, 1,000 copies, let's say on Amazon. If you have that bridge to go somewhere else, now you can justify advertising spending. You can justify going out with talking on podcasts. Maybe people are joining you. We're not doing too much about it because we don't believe in this being a good resource to do that. But that's momentum. You have to get the momentum going, right? So we're attempting to almost like, what's the word? They're telling themselves that, okay, I'm doing whatever I can to make it happen, but it's not actually true, right? And that's probably the problem in the first place.
Well, I see self-published books typically as one of the best business cards you can have because it shows expertise. It's something that you can hand over to a potential client who can read a little bit more about you. And it shows, again, expertise in your field. And yeah, I didn't want to downplay the legacy side because both my father and my grandfather are well-known authors, and my grandfather in particular. And I have great joy reading those books to my kids and reading my father's stories to my kids. And that's going to live on forever. So I'm thinking, what am I going to write? And if I'm just going to write a marketing book on TikTok right now, it's only going to be relevant for a short period of time. So it has to have a little bit more meat, even though there is a space for those books that are relevant for information now. Now, let's just talk about your growth. So when did you start?
Well, we started about 2-ish years ago, a bit more than 2 years ago, where we made a transition between self-publishing for ourselves, building businesses, to really helping people and understanding that expert side of it and helping other people to establish themselves, build their brands and expertise.
Now, if I can ask, how are you going to promote your business and how are you currently promoting your business? You're obviously here on a podcast with me talking about this, and hopefully folks are going, wow, this is exactly what I needed. I needed somebody to help me through this process. Maybe let's start there. What do you do for your clients? So let's go through that. And then I want to talk about how are you going to push your business into 2025?
Well, as you mentioned in the very beginning, when you were doing the introduction, we do everything from building the idea to writing the book itself. We are very particular about that. To publishing, distribution, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everything. And then, of course, marketing and leverage. where we advise people, we set up the marketing campaigns to make sure that that book never dies in the face of algorithms, and stays and keeps going up and keeps growing, and helps people. It helps those books to stay alive, because that's the key, right? There are windows of time where you have to lift your book up to a specific level. So when it's almost like if anybody's doing YouTube, in order for you to get friendly with the platform, you have to convince the platform that you're going to be consistent, because people love consistency, subscribers, right? The same with a book. If you are putting the efforts in, Amazon being the top platform around, at least in the Western world, in the English world, selling more than 70% of the books in the companies that Amazon owns, that's extremely important. So that part is what we take care of as well. And of course, the leverage. We help with people with strategies, going on stage, doing TEDx talks, for example, right? Very big leverage play there, especially once you get to, let's say, a bestseller status, your book really starts to take off. Those other strategies also start to really make sense.
So if somebody's got an idea for a book, talk me through the process that they are going to have with you if they give Ben a call.
First of all, it depends if they just have an idea or if they have something written. Most people just have an idea or a desire. Then, of course, we want to see the opportunity, right? If the book is, I'll give you an extreme example. Let's say the book is about aviation. We had a person like this, and he says, "Well, I want to sell 100,000 copies." I said, "It's not going to happen. It's not possible. And it doesn't matter how much money we spend on our market. It's just going to go down." It's completely different strategy. But for most people in business, most people in specific categories, this is what you want to determine in the first place. If the opportunity to achieve specific goals can match what people's expectations are. Now, if there is a match there, then we can start working together. Then we can start, okay, what do you want to do? Some people want to write a book themselves. People just tend to believe that this is the only way they can represent their own unique voice. Now, usually, almost never that's the case, because people don't know how to write, especially professional writing is a very big science and art at the same time. But if people say, okay, this is what I want to do, I am busy, I can spend 5, 6, 7 hours a week or bi-weekly, we can start working together and start to accomplish really those goals that we set in the first place.
So I've seen on your website, you've got a couple of nice testimonials, video testimonials and written testimonials of people who have worked with you. Can I ask, which has been your biggest success so far?
Well, biggest success so far actually is the person that we are working with right now. And actually, we just got a testimonial from this person probably 3 hours ago. But we are still working with this person and this person that I mentioned, where we, just from Amazon itself, we managed to turn 40,000 in advertising spend to get 40,000 back and create about 250,000 in sales at the back end, meaning value of clients from the books that they bought. So probably that's the biggest one.
That's pretty cool.
In about 6 months, 5-6 months, yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's not an overnight process. Now, let's look at 2025. So you've been going for just over 2 years. How are you going to take this business forward? Are you going to add services to your offering? Are you going to be advertising more? Are you going to be on more podcasts? Tell me about your business's strategy for growing its marketing as well, because that's what our audience would be interested in as well.
Well, I think first of all, I realize in what kind of business I'm in, and I'm not in a marketing business. I am in a perfect and amazing product business where we have to deliver an exceptional service, and that is what's going to drive our business forward. So we cannot forget about that, right? There are some businesses like gyms, like restaurants sometimes. It's a marketing play. right? You have to get people through the door. For us, it's more about having great, amazing stories, right? To go be above what the goals are. And I think we managed to do that quite well. But of course, when it comes to new client acquisition, we do quite a few things, actually. Referrals is big. And of course, that's not predictable at all times. YouTube is starting to work really well for us when it comes to YouTube advertising and getting people to have conversations with our team and to see if it's something that we can work with to drive business there. Most people don't realize. And actually, YouTube is really good for us because on YouTube, people, especially who watch long form videos, they tend to have long form patience. And this is what we need for a book, right? Because nobody needs a book. This is the perception. People want to become an author. Nobody needs a book. Nobody needs to be an author, especially in understanding but it's going to take 5-6 months to get there. But yeah, when it comes to business side of and growth, we want to be the number one. Probably in the next 2-3 years, we want to be a number one brand authors seek if they want to establish themselves as experts and use that as leverage to the maximum levels. Leverage is the key for us.
Awesome. Well, it seems like you've got your plan outlined and at least very clear on what you do. So where can I send folks who are saying, this is me, sign me up already?
Well, first of all, if anybody is serious, that's very important also, to be serious. Okay, I think now is the time, or I have an idea for a specific time. We can go to highvalueauthor.com, and it's very easy to find where to book a strategy session there. So they can go there and see if there's something that we can help them with.
Cool. So I'm just going to take my glasses off for 2 seconds because I think if people had to take a quick look, they'd say, which one's Nicholas? So we must be related somewhere, in the Baltics at some stage. Ben, it's been great chatting to you. And I hope folks go and check that out. And for those of you who want to see my grandfather and my father's books, I'll put the link in the description as well. You can go and have a look at those. Thank you so much, Ben. It's been great chatting to you.
Thank you, Nicholas.
I really do appreciate your comments, so why not go and watch this live on YouTube or go to my website, kuhne.no, that's kuhne.no, for more information.